So my name is Simon Shaw. I head up the contact centre at Eurostar. I've been with Eurostar about 9 months. Eurostar has been operating for just over 20 years. Our contact centre is around 220 seats and operates in a multilingual environment. We have English, French and Dutch speaking advisors. I think probably the most important thing is to understand what the business drivers are for the change. Is this customer driven? Is it organisational driven as such really? Then what are going to be the impacts of that change both internally and externally? So that's internally from a staffing point of view, and externally what are our customers going to feel and see that's different after the change has occurred? And then finally, how are we going to measure the success of the change? There's no point embarking on a change if we're not sure what the final outcome is going to be, so you need to make sure that you have the success criteria in place before you embark on any change. Okay, so we recently completed a organisational change at the Eurostar Contact Centre. It's to take into account the changing customer requirements and the different channels that are starting to be required to be serviced by the contact centre, which was traditionally a voice channel, but now we're needing to service a number of digital channels. With regards to that, we started and embarked on a leadership change program where we assessed all of our frontline leaders and our middle management leaders to start giving them more clearer accountability for different channels around the business, so that there was some more ownership as we embarked on this multi-channel strategy. I think the most important thing is to ensure that we maintain staff engagement throughout the change process as such really, and also in my experience create a sense of urgency around change. A lot of change programs fail because that sense of urgency isn't there, and it sort of starts becoming part of a business as usual environment, whereas you really want to set a deadline for delivering the change and then create a real sense of urgency around that. I think also as managers you need to identify change champions across the business, both cross-departmentally but also at different levels within your own organisation. So in my recent change at the call centre, I identified some key champions even at the front line level who we engaged with and shared some of that information with quite early on, so that they could then cascade that information and start bringing some of their peer groups along with them. I think the other important thing that I've realised over the last couple of years, and because I've been working in change organisations for a fair amount of time, is the next generation of staff that are now working for us are used to working in a far more collaborative environment. That's through their schooling and their university is far more collaborative than it used to be. Therefore, the old command and control structures and the environments where maybe change was forced upon people needs to really change now, and the younger generation really need to feel part of that change from the very beginning to get their full support. So in my experience, employees progress through what's known as the change curve at lots of different speeds as such really. Again, in the recent change that Eurostar went through, I had some people who went straight through to the exploratory and commitment phase, and others that were very much stuck in the resistance and denial phase. It's really important from my point of view that you focus on those people in the denial and the resistance. We had a number of staff who were in that phase and who myself and some of my management team were able to bring into that, across that change curve quite quickly, and they actually turned out to be some of our strongest advocates for the change in the end. I think the natural tendency is to jump straight and find your champions of change in the people who are fully committed and on board straight away, but actually it's more important in my experience to focus on the people who are in that first stage of the change curve, get them brought along and then help and get them to help you bring those other people who are still in that denial phase. So whilst we were planning the change, I made a decision to take some of my key leadership team out of our day-to-day environment to allow them to start thinking a bit more creatively about the change. So we took them to actually an environment a bit like a Google type environment where we had lots of beanbags and sofas and fun and games as such really, and rather than it being very much a day purely about post-it notes and flip charts and real business, it was very much more about taking the change from a different direction, which is really getting them to think about, well, what would the future in 3 or 4 years from now look like? So we framed the whole day about if Eurostar was to start again this year and we were going to relaunch and restart a contact centre in 2015, what would the structure look like? What would it feel like to you as a member of staff? What would it feel like to customers? Rather than just saying, well, this is what our current structure is and how can we organically change it? It just got everyone thinking in a bit more out of left field, a bit more out of the box as such. Really, we had some fantastic ideas that we were able to bring forward as part of the broader change programme.